You're listening to The Rule of Law, the educational podcast sponsored by All Rise, where we focus on the intersection of law, technology, and storytelling. And now, here's your host, Lauren Round.
Welcome to Rule of Law. In today's episode, we're joined by Molly Kremer, a billing coach who works with law firms to clean up their billing practices and stop leaving money on the table. We dive into bad habits that lead to lost revenue, the thought patterns behind them, and how to break the cycle so that firms can capture the full value of their time. Molly, welcome to the podcast. Where are you recording from?
I am in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Pittsburgh. Well, welcome. We're happy to have you. We always start the show with a little bit of an icebreaker to get to know you a little bit before we dive in. So your question is, if you had to move abroad anywhere, what country would you move to?
Oh, gosh. I thought you were going to say anywhere in the United States, since I've never really traveled abroad other than when I was very young. So I guess my answer would be Paris. That's just somewhere my husband and I want to go to. But yeah, that would probably be it. Everything I've heard is the city is incredible. And so that would be it.
Great answer. Yeah, I've only been to Paris once. Also, when I was younger, I haven't done a lot of traveling since I was younger either. But it was a beautiful city from what I can remember. And I remember getting back to the US and thinking it's kind of ugly here. There's not the historic buildings. There's not, all these museums. So yeah, good choice. Okay, well, we've got a lot of really good topics to cover today. But before we get into that, would you mind just starting us off kind of a little bit about your background and your journey to where you are today?
Yes, of course. So my name is Molly Kremer. I am the billing coach. I help all timekeepers, not just attorneys, but also paralegals, even legal assistants, capture their time as they go every day in a stress-free way. So what brought me to create the billing coach, since there really aren't any other billing coaches out there, I was a litigator for 16 years, and I definitely struggled with my billing habits. I would procrastinate entering my time. I usually waited till the end of the day, or sometimes the next day, or even the end of the week to make sure I got all my time in. I definitely struggled with something I call now confusion cutting. It's where I would tell myself, I don't think it's billable. I don't know if it's billable. And so I felt a little confused, and so I wouldn't bill for it. And then also, I don't know how to capture this time, even though I know this is something that is billable. So I struggled with that. And then also underbilling or under recording time. I would tell myself it shouldn't have taken me this long to get this done. And so I would just shave off, 0.3, 0.4 there, here and there, or, even more time, because I would think it should have taken me less time. So those three areas really kept me under billing and not capturing all of my time. And so what happened to me was in 2020, I really burnt out because I was overworking. I was working on the weekends to catch up on hours. I was working late at night to catch up on hours that I was missing, or again, underbilling or not recording. And so I really did feel that burnout. And back then, I didn't know that it was related to my billing habits. I thought it had to do something with me. Maybe I wasn't a good enough attorney. I couldn't keep up. But then I found a coach who really helped me to see that most of the practices that I was doing with my billing were really unhelpful. And so I started applying some of the concepts and tools she was giving me to help with my mindset around billing. And then I started teaching myself how to justify my time. I created this 4-part framework to really defend my billable narratives. And so the time that actually was realized started to increase. And I found myself not having to work on the weekends or after work. And then finally just started enjoying my practice again. So I realized that, if this was helpful to me, then obviously this could be helpful to other attorneys. And so that's kind of how it started. I helped some coworkers with their billing habits, mindset around it. I helped, some people on LinkedIn. I started posting on LinkedIn some tips. And then it just kind of evolved from there.
One quick follow-up on that, because we have a lot of listeners, most of our listeners are attorneys. And at one point or another, just about every attorney has thought about leaving the practice of law to either go do something else, but there's a lot that goes along with that because you have spent so much time and invested so much in becoming an attorney. So, do you mind just telling us a little bit about your thought process in leaving, how you decided to leave, what leading up to actually making the jump, any of that?
Yeah. So I stayed, practiced for another 2 years after I was more formally established as the billing coach. And part of the reason was because I had the mindset that I could do both. I could both have a legal practice, bill a full 8-hour day, and also create this business on the side. And that and was something I had practiced before with my billing habits. So before it was I could only do the legal work and then I'll do the billing work later. But then part of the mindset shift for me back then, changing my billing habits, was what if it's possible I could do the legal work and the billing work as I went? And that's when that contemporaneous timekeeping really took hold. And I was able to increase my capacity to finalize the legal work and also finalize my billing entries as I went. So that was a huge shift for me. But I did soon realize that my legal work was towards the end suffering a bit since my business, I was getting more and more one-on-one clients, more workshops, and it just felt like a natural transition to go full on into my billing coaching business. But I always caution attorneys who feel like they feel that billable hour burnout. They think maybe going in-house could be a solution where you don't have to bill your time. But I always caution them, it's just going to be another problem. There's going to be more problems over there or different problems than the problem here, which is the billable hour. And you can solve that. I have all the tools, all the resources, the mindset plus strategies to help you do that. So you don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to give up on your legal career that you've worked so hard for. You just have to practice better billing habits. And when I give them the tools, give them the mindset, it's so helpful. And they realize what a relief. They don't have to leave the law or go in-house.
Yeah, no, that's a huge shift. And I think something probably a lot of attorneys don't think about because they think maybe it's just specific to this firm, or maybe it's specific, like you said, to working at a law firm and not in-house. But actually, the bad practices can follow you around anywhere.
Yes, exactly. We take
Okay.
ourselves where we go.
Yes, exactly. So you hit on some of this in the beginning about like the problems that you experienced when you were billing and all of the side effects of that and the burnout and everything. But just sort of more generally at a high level in your role now, take us through kind of the biggest gaps that you see in billing at law firms and really what that's resulting in on, the employee side and the business side for law firms.
Yeah. So the biggest gap for sure is that firms spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on the billing infrastructure, like the billing software, right, to capture that time, which obviously it's a great spend, but they don't spend any money on the education part, on educating their timekeepers, again, the attorneys, the paralegals, who put the actual entries into the billing software. They don't educate them on how they can do that, strategies to make sure they're justifying their time, right? They don't give them a really solid definition of billable time. So they get stuck in a lot of confusion over whether something is even billable or not, whether it even put it into the billing software. They don't educate them on a billing framework, how to articulate the value of their work in their billing narratives. They don't give them strategies for contemporaneous timekeeping, especially for attorneys who are super busy and feel like they don't have time to bill. They don't treat billing as something that is as important as the legal work itself. They treat it as administrative. They treat it as something that can be kind of crammed at the end of the day or later, and the legal work is the thing that's the most important thing. So that's a big gap with law firms and not just law firms, but just the legal culture in general. Most attorneys have the importance, 100% of the importance on the legal work, but very little, if any, on the billing work. And so that I definitely see as a gap. There's also a psychology gap. So firms that don't address with their timekeepers the guilt, right? The second guessing, the I don't want to look greedy to my clients thinking that causes them to write down a lot of their legitimate time. That's a big consistent gap. And then I would also say the onboarding. So I know this is changing with a lot of firms. I work with a lot of firms to help onboard their first years. But I know when I was first onboarded to my first firm, the expectation was just make sure you bill your time. And that was it. No training, right? Maybe they gave me a little bit of training on the billing software back then. But for the most part, there really isn't any structured billing education for newer attorneys. So there is more room for write-downs, write-offs, right? There's no guidance on contemporaneous timekeeping. There's no conversations about the psychology of time. It's just make sure you enter your time. So of course, that kind of gets put on the back burner, and that's where the unhelpful billing habits start, is really just right from the beginning. So yeah, there's lots of different gaps that are there, and it's not just firms, but I think the legal culture as well as a whole.
I think a lot of attorneys listening might, that all might resonate with them, and they think, yeah, I probably could improve my training. I know my billing system and practices aren't perfect, but it's working. So it's not that big of a deal. If it's not perfect, it's too heavy of a lift to kind of do an overhaul. So can you talk a little bit about maybe the hidden costs or even just the real costs that law firms do not realize that when they don't invest in these systems and processes?
Yes. So for sure, attorneys are losing a lot of billable time. So anecdotally, based on my experience, based on the experience I have heard from attorneys over the last 4+ years that I've been doing this, anecdotally, it is about 520 hours per year that is lost, that is actually completely legitimate billable time due to 3 main, what I call time burglars or billing obstacles. And I had kind of mentioned before, these were some of the areas that I struggled with. So procrastination. The ABA has done studies where attorneys typically lose about 1 hour of billable time daily if they wait till the end of the day to capture their time. So that typically is just because they forget. They forget about, a conference that they had internally with one of their associates or with a partner that was, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Or they forget the thinking time that went into the drafting work, right? Another point 2, point 3. There could be other pieces that are just forgotten if they're not in the calendar or recorded phone log or in the browsing history, all the ways to go back and reconstruct your time. But if it's not there, it typically gets lost. So 1 hour is actually a conservative amount of time if you are procrastinating. And then there's the other 2 time stealers, so the confusion cutting and the underbilling. Confusion cutting is, like I said earlier, I don't know how to bill for this, and so typically attorneys don't, or I don't think I can bill for it. I don't think it's billable time, even if it is. So typically that results in about a 0.5 or 30 minutes daily of time that's just never recorded, based on just feeling confused. Like, I don't know if I can, so I won't. And then there's the underbilling. A lot of attorneys, especially a lot of attorneys I've noticed who are socialized as women, tend to underreport their time because they don't want the partner or the client to think they're being inefficient. Maybe they're not smart enough to get it done quicker, or, right, a lot of the shoulding. It should take me less time. So again, conservative estimates, at least for me, it was about 0.5 every day. So if you add those up, the 0.5 for confusion cutting, the 0.5 for the underbilling, and that hour, again, all conservative, for reconstructing at the end of the day, the procrastinating, that's about 2 hours of legitimate billable time. And then if you compound that over the day or over the week, that's about 10 hours every week of lost time due to these unhelpful habits. And so what happens if you don't have those 10 hours in there and you have a certain billable hour target? You have to make it up somewhere. So that's what I was doing. I was working, an extra hour or 2 after work or on the weekends to make up those 10 hours. And of course it fluctuated, but it was a very legitimate thing for me and a lot of the attorneys I coach. So that's a lot of time, 520 hours. And especially, again, that's per year. If you multiply that, 40 hours a month, it's about 520 hours a year in time that could have been realized, could have been billed to the client, but just wasn't because of those 3 main obstacles. So firms are for sure losing out on that time and probably a lot more. So that's one factor. Another factor for firms is turnover. It is so expensive for an attorney to leave, especially one that's been there a while. And so a lot of attorneys who I coach, it's kind of like the last ditch effort of the law firm. They're great attorneys. And I would say actually the better attorneys sometimes are the ones with the worst billing habits, because they're the ones who are solely focused on the legal work, on making their clients happy, right? Versus their work, which is to bill their time. So a lot of the clients I work with, a lot of the attorneys I work with, the firm wants to keep them, but their hours are so low, they don't see a way to keep them. So they try to use my billing coaching services to help them to reclaim that time, don't feel like they're burnt out, and won't have to let them go. So that's just a couple of ways that I think firms feel the cost of unhelpful billing habits. And so I'm sure there's a lot more, but those are the two main culprits.
Yeah, I mean, most people probably would never think it would add up to 500 plus hours. I mean, that's a part-time attorney over the course of an entire year. So that's a huge number.
Incredible. Yeah, and I do get pushback from that, but I tell them that's a conservative number. It actually could be a lot more, but that's just conservatively write-downs here, not billing here, forgetting time here. And it's all avoidable with just some practical skills and some shifts in mindset.
Sure. Following up on one of the factors that you mentioned, and you talked about this in other forums too, but it's what you mentioned about attorneys being sort of scared to bill, thinking that, like you said, they should have done it faster, or they're afraid to get client pushback, whatever the reasons are. Can you maybe walk us through some of that psychology shift, or do you try to help clients sort of prepare for those client meetings in the event that their client does push back, or just generally how do they break out of being scared to bill? Because that feels like a sort of fundamental thing that might be difficult to overcome.
Yes. So part of what I teach in my workshops and my one-on-ones and in my group trainings is a billing model that is very simple to remember, to use, but sometimes hard to actually implement. So this is what I tell them when it comes to possibly underbilling some time, the attorneys who feel guilty about it. So I like to show them, if you want to model out what's going on in their brain when they take the action of maybe writing down some of their time. So I give them an example of the circumstance could be, right, crafting a motion to dismiss for a litigator. And let's just say it takes them 3 hours to do that motion. So I like to say that is the circumstance. But then what happens when you go to enter your time, your brain will offer you a thought. And typically the thought is, it's too much time, or the client won't pay that, or it should have been less. Some version of like, it should have not taken me that long, and this feels bad. I feel guilty. I feel like, the client's not going to like me. The client's going to push back, whatever it is. And so from that feeling, from that emotion, from that negative sensation in their bodies, what happens then, again, this is kind of a crystallized moment. If we want to like take a snapshot of what's happening when attorneys when they underbill some of their time, typically what happens is their brains will offer them a very clever solution. They will say, hey, you know what makes you feel better? You know what gets rid of this guilt that you're feeling right now because you're thinking this thought, it should be less. Just underbill a little bit of time. Just charge them, bill 2 hours instead of 3. And so they do. And then what happens is the result is you don't have this alignment with the time you spend and the time you actually bill to the client. And so, of course, now we're missing an hour, or let's just say they bill 2.5, whatever it is. And that is the cycle. So their brain constantly over time, the pattern is it should have taken less time, feel guilty, solution, underbill a little bit of time. Should have taken less time, feel guilty, solution, underbill a little bit of time. And again, it's not a lot in the moment, and they do feel relief. They do feel better because they're like, oh, the client won't push back on this, or this is the amount of time it should have taken me, right? Whatever it is. And they do feel better. The attorney feels better, but they are the one that loses. All of a sudden, they've lost that hour that they now have to go and make up somewhere, again, on the weekends or after work, staying late in order to meet whatever their billable hour requirement is for the day or the month or the year. So that's typically the model that a lot of attorneys spin in. So I just like to show them that so that they can be aware of it, so that they know, oh, wait a minute, this is more of a mindset issue than it's an actual circumstance. So then I show them, okay, same model. Let's use a different thought this time. So let's say you spent 3 hours on a motion, right? And the motion to dismiss. But instead of thinking it should be less and feeling a little guilty, instead, what if it was always supposed to take 3 hours? Or it took what it took, and that's okay. I can justify my time. I can write a really defensible narrative. Maybe I break it up a little bit, but it took what it took. That's my only job, is to record how long it took me. And then it's my job, my responsibility to educate the client in my billing narrative as to the value, as to why it took that amount of time. I'm never going to write down time, right? I always say that's above your pay grade, especially for associates, to write down or write off time. Your job is simply to record the time it took and then to educate the client or the partner reviewing your billing entry on the value of it, the why, so that when they do go to review that entry, they feel more confident. And so they are more likely to take the action of not pushing back on the bill or the partner writing down some of the time. And the same thing for the attorney. If they're telling themselves, it took what it took, maybe it was a complicated motion, right? All of that, I'm just going to record my time and try to justify it as much as possible, but I'm not going to be the one to write it down. And then all of a sudden they get into a new pattern, a new mindset around their time. And that is the pattern that will help them capture more of their time. The pattern that doesn't, the underbilling timekeeping model, I like to call it, is the one where they feel guilty and then they try to solve for it by actioning their way out of the guilt by under-recording some of their time. I always like to tell them, never try to action your way out of any guilty feeling about your time. What you want to do is just shift the thought, change how you're thinking about it, offer your brain a new thought, a new way to be thinking about the time you spent on that motion, something that feels more empowering, something that feels more confident. So if you go back to this new, more intentional model around the time they spend, if they tell themselves, you know what, it took what it took, they're going to feel at least a little bit more confident, a little bit more at ease with the amount of time. And from there, their brain has nothing to solve. Their brain's like, well, this feels great. I feel pretty good about this time. And so the action they're way more likely to take is to enter the full amount of time. So this is a little more of a long-winded way to break it up and to say it. But if they just keep these models in mind, the idea that it really is just the thinking about the time that is ultimately creating the either wanted or unwanted result of either underbilled time or accurate time, they can use these models anytime they feel that kind of pang of guilt around it. So that's just one way I help them. The other part of your question is when clients do push back, 100%, clients are going to push back. And so you also can be thinking about that ahead of time by, again, how do we more likely get the clients to not push back, to actually accept the time that is entered, justify those billing narratives. Create a narrative. I have a 4-part framework: action, task, value, result, that helps to justify the time, that helps to show the client why it's valuable, why it helps to move their case forward, or if transactional, why it helps to get to that ultimate deliverable, the result that they want. And so when the client is reviewing that entry, if they can feel the value of it, they're going to feel more confident. The problem, though, is that most attorneys don't write these value-packed narratives. They don't justify the time because they're trying to just get through the billing as quickly as they can at the end of the day so they can go home. So what I try to help educate the attorneys on is how can you help to zealously advocate for the time that you're spending on your clients' cases, just as you advocate for them, on behalf of them for their cases, but you need to do the same for your time. And one ending point is I always like to tell them, your client is always getting the better deal. They always can make more money, but you will never get back that time you spent on their case. So if they want to think about it that way, they're always giving the client the better deal. Time is a finite resource. You never get it back. So the client, who can always make more money, is always getting the better deal, if that helps to soothe a little bit of the feeling of, ooh, took too much time, right? So the core of my program is to help attorneys feel more empowered about the time they're spending on their clients' cases. And they start to do that by accurately capturing their time, justifying it in their narratives, using that 4-part billing framework: action, task, value, result, or at least the 3-part action, task, and value, so that when it does go to the client can feel confident about the money that they're about to pay to the attorney. And one more thing, so many things, but the client doesn't have to pay for it. So the attorney can still be like, okay, I'm not making the client pay for this legal service, the whatever I'm going to bill to them, but I can educate them on the value provided. And then obviously we can have a back and forth conversation, but you will be in a more confident place if you are confidently capturing that time and discussing or describing the value of it. So when you come to that conversation with the client about the amount, it's easier. You already feel confident about it. So that conversation will be much easier for you, for both of you.
Yeah. Speaking of thoughts that enter attorneys' minds in this context, I feel like maybe at a more fundamental level, a reality kind of underpinning all this is attorneys don't necessarily like to bill time at all. You do hear a lot of complaints, especially from associates who haven't been doing this for years and they're not used to it and they've never had to do something as detailed as this. Using your framework, they get to the end of an hour, get to the end of a task, and they don't want to do the billing. So then the thought their mind offers them is, well, you can just procrastinate till the end of the day to solve that problem. So is there like a similar framework that you use with attorneys to help them get over, I just simply do not want to do this until the end of the day, so I'm going to put it off?
Yes. And so that's another part of the workshops I do in the one-on-one coaching is the procrastination model, or what I call the reconstructing timekeeping model. It's the mindset pattern where, again, the circumstance could be, it's time to bill, right? Done with this task, time to bill it. Then again, what is the thought that comes up that their brain offers to them and may have been offering to them for a very long time? Maybe they picked it up from another attorney or wherever. And the thought typically is, I don't have time to bill. I don't want to bill, right? Something that creates kind of a little bit of pressure or resistance and negative emotion. Like, oh, I've got too much work. I'm already overwhelmed enough with this work. I got deadlines for these cases. And so when they even think about billing, the first thing that comes up is some feeling of resistance around it, some kind of emotional resistance or overwhelm or pressure to go and do the next legal task. And so again, their brain being very clever, because brains really do want to keep you surviving. And when it feels that negative emotion, the brain's like, oh, the billing is what's causing this negative emotion. And in order to feel better, just don't do the billing. Go do that legal work that's more important. Go jump in your email inbox and start answering client emails. Do the billing later. And they do. They listen to that part of their brain that continues to tell them, do it later, to get the relief of not getting to the legal work, not getting into their inbox, not getting to the next thing on their to-do list. And they do get that hit of relief by telling themselves, I'll do it later. So I call that the reconstructing timekeeping model. And this just goes all day, every day, days, months, weeks, years at a time. So it's very ingrained. So you probably won't even hear it. It's just a very ingrained pattern. And so you don't even hear yourself, even offer yourself, okay, it's time to bill. That's why I have attorneys come to me and they're like, I don't even think about billing all day. I'm like, then it's very ingrained that you're really just doing the legal work all day. And you've been telling yourself for a very long time, I'll do it later. So again, same model. So if we take that model, it's time to bill. I don't want to do it, or I don't have time to do it. I'll do it later, right? Feel a little resistance. The action is to procrastinate, to avoid billing in the moment. And then the result that they create at the end of the day is zero bill time for the day. They didn't capture any time. And so it's so fascinating, because I have attorneys tell me this all the time. They're like, no, Molly, you don't even understand. I really don't have time to bill. Because at the end of the day, look, I have zero billed time. I haven't billed any time today. And I'm like, yeah, it's because you've had this model of I don't have time to bill. I don't have time to bill. I don't have time to bill that's been running through your brain all day. And so at the end of the day, the result that you created with this is proof of the thought. You don't have any time billed. You don't have time to bill. So that's the belief that is at the core of this procrastination habit, because now they have evidence. They look at their billing software and they see zero billed time for the day. There's no entries. And they're like, I was right. I didn't have any time, right? And so it's this perpetuating cycle of being right about not having time to bill. But I always tell them, I promise you don't have to be right about this, which irks attorneys to no end, right? No, but I am. And so we just gradually shift into a new model, which hopefully will lead into my gold standard of the contemporaneous timekeeping model, which is, I say model, but it's really a mindset. It's just another way to say mindset. And so I gently lead them in there with maybe the thought, what if it's possible I did have just a little bit of time after a couple of my tasks today to bill my time for it? And that just kind of opens the door just a little bit to the possibility. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But when they do enter a little bit of time in the billing software at that time, at the end of the day, if they have maybe an hour of time, their brain's like, oh, actually, I did have a little bit of time to capture some of my time contemporaneously. That's the start. That's when it becomes, okay, wait a minute, I do have a little bit of time. At least I have a little. And then we build on that. So every day we make bigger and bigger strides to maybe there's 2 hours. But we want to start building a different mindset to eventually get to, I always have time to capture my time. I always find little spaces and pockets throughout the day to get my time in, right? And making it easier. And then at the end of the day, if they have 6, 7, 8 hours in, then they're like, well, I do have time. And then it becomes a belief. And then it's so much easier to have that habit if you have a strong belief that you do have both the time to do the legal work and get the billing work done. And again, it's not 100%. We don't want perfection, but at least you have to start with showing yourself as the attorney that there is a little bit of time to enter your time as you go.
Hi there, it's Riza, your favorite AI avatar. You've probably seen me on some of my All Rise social media posts recently. Anyway, I just wanted to pop into Lauren's podcast to encourage you to take a few minutes to learn about All Rise. It's an award-winning AI-powered practice management system that's perfect for mid-sized law firms. It handles everything from client intake to final billing. Oh, we're also a Microsoft partner, so All Rise works seamlessly with the Microsoft applications you already use every day. Check us out at allrise.ai. Okay, let's get back to the podcast.
Sticking on the sort of thought theme for a minute, something that you talk about that I don't see a lot of other professionals really in any legal niche talk about is building systems that work for neurodivergent attorneys. And depending on the nature of the neurodivergence, traditional billing can be very difficult for some attorneys. So do you find that these systems actually work better for neurodivergent attorneys as opposed to just having them sort of wait till the end of the day and figure it out themselves? Or do you tailor your patterns and your program for those attorneys? Talk to us a little bit about your work in that space.
Yes. So I believe that billing can be one of the most cognitively demanding tasks for neurodivergent brains, right? Thinking of ADHD, because there are 4 main symptoms for ADHD brains. And I'll just kind of rest on that one. I know there's different types of neurodivergency, but typically it's the ADHD brain. And there's 4 symptoms that make billing very hard for them. And yes, I definitely have structures and systems for them specifically, lots of routine that helps them work with their brain and not against it. So the first symptom for ADHD is that time blindness. They're notorious for this, right? Hours go by and an ADHD attorney genuinely cannot feel how much time has passed. And so it's really hard for them to build their time contemporaneously because they're so laser focused in on what they're doing and time goes by fast. So that's the second one, hyper focus. So time blindness combined with hyper focus, and typically the hyper focus isn't on the billing, it's typically on the legal work, right? So they typically spend a big chunk of their days focused on the legal work and don't switch their focus, because that's a third symptom, that task switching is very difficult for neurodivergent brains, for ADHD brains. It's difficult for them to switch into different tasks quickly. So it is harder for them to bill as they go. So the 4 ones, time blindness, hyper focus, task switching, and then also working memory gap. So that's the 4th one. All of these make it really, really hard to be able to have great timekeeping habits. But that's why that 4th one, the working memory gaps, that's why I think it's so crucial for them to have a contemporaneous timekeeping habit. So that's why I really help them with those other 3, the time blindness, hyperfocus, and the task switching. So I have different structures, different practices for them to help them with that. Because, I mean, a lot of attorneys also struggle with those areas as well, not just the ADHD attorneys. But that's why billing becomes super hard for them when they have all of these other symptoms along with it.
Kind of doing a hard pivot, but we always have to ask about AI on the show, and I think it's like the nature of the industry right now. We ask about this a lot with a lot of different guests, but I do think it's particularly relevant here because attorneys are really grappling with how to work AI into their practices, including in billing, because it is, smart to use AI in your practice because clients are demanding it now. It can definitely be a time saver, but it's a different world when it comes to billing because they don't know how to define it. They don't know how to work it in when AI is blended seamlessly into your work that's not AI. So how are you thinking about this and working through this with your clients?
Yeah, I mean, my part of the billing world is to help definitely with the psychology and the mindset. I am a huge fan of AI. I mean, obviously it's not going anywhere, and I think it's going to help so much in the billing sphere, at least to make it easier to capture more of their time. Obviously, the timekeeper still has to at least enter it for the most part. I mean, there are some AI, billing software platforms, right, like yours, that is amazing with the AI. It can use the frameworks. It can automatically put some of the time in. If they're working on something, drafting something, AI can actually help put in a narrative for them while they're in that document. So there are ways it can really, really help. But there's also areas where it's not as great as capturing. I like to call that intellectual work product, kind of in their brain when the attorney is strategizing, evaluating cases, determining next steps, recommendations. All of that is billable time, since my definition of billable time is if it moves the matter forward and adds value, then it's billable. So I think a lot of the time attorneys are spending evaluating, making recommendations, all of that. When it's not fingers to keyboard, some of that time does get lost. But I think AI is fantastic for helping to capture more time if the billing software is able to do that. Plus I like to work with my law firms and the attorneys at the firms to show them how they can take my billing blueprint, which is a one-pager I have for transactional attorneys, litigators. I also have for paralegals as well. A one-pager that has my 4-part framework: action, task, value, result. Lots of different examples of how they can frame their narratives from that one-pager. And also I have blue books that give tons of narrative examples with that 4-part framework. But AI is fantastic for what if the attorney's like, I don't know even how to articulate this in a narrative. And so you can upload my billing blueprint and blue book to an AI platform of choice, right? Claude, ChatGPT, whatever it is. And I do have prompts, but AI has gotten so smart that you don't really even need prompts. You can just type in kind of the work you're doing. This is what I just worked on. Can you create a 4-part narrative for me for what I just did? And we'll take it from my billing blueprint and my examples in the billing blue book and give some really great 4-part narrative frameworks. So it makes it easy, makes it quick. They can just get the narrative from AI, obviously tailor it, and then put it into the billing software. So I think it is helpful with the how part, the billing how. A lot of attorneys do struggle with the how. How do they frame this? How do they articulate the value? How do I describe what I just did to the client so they'll pay for it? AI is a great companion for that. So the more it can help you with articulating the value, the better. And so using my blueprints, it's just a little helpful framework for AI to work from. But there are so many ways it can help attorneys to do it more quickly, right? Get the narrative and then move on to the next task so billing doesn't take too much time. So I always am a big advocate of any type of AI to help with getting the how in. And also there are softwares, obviously, that help to capture the time that maybe you don't remember to capture. So having both is great. Having AI there to help you with capturing time that maybe you forgot, maybe some emails that you forgot to bill, right? And if it does track your emails and it may nudge you or give you certain billing narratives for the emails. But anyway, AI can help and the software can help. I think it's a good team together.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's a underutilized possibly use of AI, because the most obvious use is, helping you do research, helping you do the first draft, helping you do the first review of contracts. But I don't know that a lot of attorneys are thinking about it can actually help me on the other end of it too, justify all of this to a client. So yeah, I think that's really important.
Yes.
Well, we always like to leave our listeners with some sort of practical steps, takeaways that they can think about today, tomorrow. And you've already given a lot of practical advice. But what are kind of, just to bring it all together, like 1 or 2 steps attorneys could take tomorrow to make progress in getting their billing practices to a better place, aside from calling you, of course, that's number 1. But anything else you can leave us with?
Yeah, I have a couple little terms you could just write down on a Post-it note to help you, not just with the underbilling habit, if that's something that you struggle with, or the procrastination. Cringe and count your time. So typically what it looks like in that billing model is, again, this took too long, it shouldn't have taken that long, or I don't have time to bill, right? The procrastination model. Instead, if you can't grab that better feeling thought of like, it took what it took, or, how is it possible I could just bill this little bit of time now? Sometimes it's helpful just to feel the resistance about how much time you spent, or that you don't want to do it. Cringe through that feeling and go and enter your time anyway. Count all your time anyway. So that's kind of my plan B. Plan A is always, let's shift the mindset so that it becomes just a pattern and a habit. But sometimes attorneys just need to feel that negative emotion, and instead of solving for it by underbilling or avoiding the billing, putting it off till later, just cringe through that discomfort and then go and count your time anyway, record your time anyway. So at least you'll start building evidence that you can count your time in the moment, count all your time, and then your brain will see that and be like, oh, maybe I can accurately count all my time without underbilling it. Maybe I can get my time contemporaneously entered. So that's one, the cringe and count it method. Another approach that has been really helpful, I call it the anchoring advantage approach. So contemporaneous timekeeping doesn't necessarily mean just billing your time after every task. I always say you can actually enter your narrative before you go into whatever the task is you're about to jump into. This is really helpful, especially if you're a litigator, because you review documents for different stages of the litigation all throughout the case. And sometimes our brains get confused as to what we are reviewing and what the purpose is for it. So you could be reviewing documents in preparation for a deposition, or you could be reviewing the same documents in preparation for a hearing, or for trial, or for a motion in limine. There's so many different purposes, results that you're aimed at with the review. So I like to have billing be the helper by, if you can actually frame your narrative before you jump into the legal work, you at least have that narrative, and it helps you to stay laser focused on what you are looking for in the documents, or right, what you are about to jump into. So you have that billing narrative, review and evaluate medical records from A. Smith, in preparation for plaintiff's depo. So now you know what you're looking for. You've kind of articulated it. It's in the entry. Your brain is primed. Then you can get into the work. And then at the end, all you have to do is capture the time. So that anchoring advantage will help to anchor you into the task you're about to do. And I just think it helps to make you a better attorney. So you don't just kind of look up and you're like, wait a minute, what am I reviewing this for? I forget. That has happened to me many, many times. So using billing as a tool to help you, I think, is really advantageous. So there's at least 2 takeaways if they want to start with it. Cringe and count it, and maybe use that anchoring advantage approach. Oh, one more. So I always like to talk about momentum. I think building momentum from the start of the day is the most important piece of capturing your time contemporaneously. It's when you wait till 2 p.m. and you're like, oh no, I forgot to bill all day. That's when there's very little momentum to help you to start and to get started. So I always say, first thing in the morning, open up your Outlook or whatever your email is, open up your document management system, open up your browser, that's fine, and then open up your billing software. Make it just as important as the legal work you're about to embark on. And then open up one entry and try to capture at least that first entry. You'll notice that when you get through that first entry, your brain will offer you the thought like, actually, that wasn't so bad. I can do that. That was easy, right? And then all of a sudden you get a couple entries in and you get on a roll and you feel the momentum of it. And that's what helps you to push you throughout the day to contemporaneously bill. And it reminds your brain, oh yeah, this is important. This is something that we do all day. We do it along with the legal work. So opening the billing software, very important first thing to do. So there's 3 takeaways that they can implement today or at least tomorrow.
Great. No, I love the cringe and do it anyway and I think attorneys are uniquely positioned for that, because think about getting through law school. That's all law school was. Getting through the bar exam. That's all the bar exam was. So they're capable of it.
Yes, exactly. You got it.
All right. Well, thank you again, Molly, so much for being here. In closing, what is the best way for our listeners to follow you and learn more about your work?
Yes, so I am on LinkedIn. I definitely post tips, lots of timekeeping tips on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. You can also find me at thebillingcoach.com. You'll see there are numerous ways to get in touch with me, either for one-on-one coaching. I do billing workshops, firm-wide billing workshops that do earn 1 hour CLE ethics credit in all 50 states. I also do group trainings for smaller firms. So 10, 15 attorneys. I do have a program where it's more intensive, a group training. And I also have smaller webinars. I'm also on YouTube. There's a couple of clips on there. If you want to get some videos, some billing tips, there's also that. I have a LinkedIn newsletter, all the ways, but thebillingcoach.com, or just put The Billing Coach in LinkedIn and you can find me there as well.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you again, Molly. Take care.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks for listening, and join us again for another Rule of Law podcast from All Rise.